Holy Spirit, amen. Welcome back to our Bible study, and good to see all of you. And hopefully we're starting this year fresh and ready for more wisdom, to be more wiser. We're continuing on the book of Wisdom, Sirach Chapter 32, and we basically left at, I think, verse 21. Talking about basically what we talked about last time, just how we ended last time, is we're talking about the wise man versus the unwise man in terms of receiving correction or receiving counsel. And basically verse 21, which is in front of us, a sinful man will shun correction and he will find a rationalization in accord with his own will. And we said basically that the unwise man will reject correction, and instead of apologizing, he would spend a lot of time and effort justifying his actions. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you all. So that's where we left it last time, is compare between the wise and the unwise person in terms of receiving correction and receiving counsel. And we said the unwise man will reject correction because what? We talked about different reasons why we, instead of saying unwise man, let's humble ourselves and say, I'm the unwise person, okay? And many times I reject correction or I reject counsel from people, or, I don't like people tell me, I'm wrong. And so what's the reason for that? Or reasons? What's the reason and reasons for that? So the advice may be wrong. And I said, let's humble ourselves. The advice could be wrong. Now I'm saying, we're talking about the unwise person. So I'm assuming the advice is correct. But that person is rejecting the advice. What other reason would someone reject advice or correction? Well, rejecting correction, that means it's correct. So I'm telling you this is wrong, do it this way. We're assuming this is the right one. Yeah, we're assuming it's the right one. So that's what's called correction. Someone's correcting you. And that is assuming it's right. Why do we reject receiving advice or receiving correction from people? What would be the reasons we don't do that? We reject correction. Pride and ego. Excellent. Number one, pride and ego. I think I know everything, so I'm not going to listen to anyone. Okay? Remember, we talked about that last time. So, and I'm trying to stretch your memory back, how many weeks now? 4 or 5 weeks? Because that's important. That's how I'm going to start, so we can go to the next point. Okay? What are the reasons why people reject correction? Insecurity. Excellent. Said many reasons last time. So pride, insecurity, what else? Addiction. Okay? So can't stop. No matter you tell me this is wrong. Excellent, very good. I don't think we came up with addiction last time, because you're not here, maybe that's why. Thank you, Shua. Yeah, typical. Now, think logically, guys. I think, again, when we're studying this book of wisdom, let's not sort of use it to judge people and say, oh yeah, I know someone who doesn't like correction. No, let's humble ourselves and take it on a personal level. Say, yeah, that's me. I don't like to be corrected. And why? This is an opportunity to ask myself why I don't like to be corrected, so we can fix ourselves and we can grow spiritually and we can be better people. That's the whole point of reading the Bible, so I can become a better person, okay? According to what the person Christ wants me to be. So when we're reading this, it's not to point the finger at someone, yeah, I know, he does that. It's not me. Well, that's actually using the Bible to condemn myself, to judge myself more than others. So that's why I said to start by humbling ourselves and saying, okay, what makes me stop or makes me reject correction? Pride, insecurity, addiction to the thing that they want me to stop. Excellent. What else? Excellent. So I don't think that's wrong. My perception, I don't agree That's good. Excellent. And that's a big one because that hinders everything. If I don't agree, then I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to correct it. That's right. Where else? This side, you've been quiet. Other than before. Laziness? Excellent. We actually said that, I remember we talked about that for a long time last time. We said people of the fear of the unknown, or the fear of, if I stop this and take a different route, I don't know what it's going to look like. Then laziness, and I want to go saying, I'm too scared of change, because that means I may need to become a different person of who I am, and there's a lot of unknowns about it. I don't know I'm going to look like. And we said, I think last time, I'm not sure how far we went last time, but many people keep going in the wrong way because they're too scared if they change, they may be rejected by others. And they all think about people's perception of them. Even if they're convinced, yeah, I know what I'm doing is wrong, I want to change to do the right thing, but if I do this, I may, for example, lose friends on the way. I'm not prepared to lose friends. I may become a different person. My personality will change. Will I be accepted as the new person with a new personality? There's a fear of not being accepted if I change. Can you see that? And that's one of the hindrances for us of being corrected. What do you think? Please. To money? Yeah, we'll talk about addiction generally, but I didn't talk about money specifically. Talk about generally.
Money has addiction, like you go and spend it all over, like drugs, like what it's called, into the banking machines and all of that.
Welcome, guys. Okay, you can look at it this way, but I just want to keep it general, like not specific. Yeah, it could be, that's right. Part of the change is I may lose something. I may lose people, I may lose money, I may lose status, I may lose, I don't know, I may lose popularity, you know, and that's why, for example, many of the teenagers, they do the wrong thing, even though if you ask them one-on-one, are you really happy what you're doing? You say, no, but I'm popular. I fit in within my group, and if I change, am I going to lose that group? I'm not going to be popular anymore. So that's a fear, and that's why they reject correction. And their parents try to correct them, and they'll say no, and they'll argue with them, even though deep inside they know their parents are right, but they're not prepared to listen to the correction because that means that requires change, and they're not willing to change. Can you see what I'm trying to say? That may need change, but whether we're willing or not to change, that's a different thing. Any other reasons?
One other reason might be despair.
Thank you. This side finally speaking. Thank you, Hope.
Despair.
Despair.
If you're too far from God and for His forgiveness and mercy. So, like you're too far deep into more sin that His grace can't.
Help you.
Yeah, sanctify you.
Excellent. Very good. So despair. So one of the reasons why I'm not going to change or I reject correction is because I think there's no point. It's too late. I'm deep into the sin. I've been doing it for years. I can't see myself changing now. It's too late. And as if God's going to forgive me anyway. You know, sometimes the devil is clever at that point, despair. As if after doing this sin for years, you're going to change. As if God's going to have mercy on you. As if God's going to forgive you if you repent and confess. As if. Always this question comes to mind. And this is many of the questions why people refrain from repenting and confessing is because they don't believe that God's grace will work in their life, and they don't believe that they'll be forgiven. Very good point. And that what happens, they keep going in the wrong direction because they think that's familiar territory, and I don't think there's any other way. There's no other option. Very good. See, guys, when you're discussing it, you're coming up with the very deep points that we all can learn from. Excellent. Most of these points, by the way, I didn't prepare, I didn't think about. So I'm just going with you on the spot. So don't think I didn't prepare any of that stuff. I'm getting from you and talking back to you. That's the cheap way of doing it, you know?
It's a good thing.
Tell me more. Teach me more. So I only have one line here. I don't have any more than one line. Tell me.
About ignorance.
What about ignorance? I'm sure it has to twist everything, doesn't it? تفضل يا شيخ.
Like, what if you just don't know enough? Like, you're so ignorant to the idea of what you're doing, and you don't know enough, and even though you're told this is the wrong way, you don't, it's not that simple. Like, it's not just, okay, you told me it's the wrong way, but you haven't given me enough. You haven't given me information. You haven't given me why it's the wrong way. You haven't, like, it's just, you're just telling me, look, this is the wrong way, this is bad, then look.
So what you're saying is you're not convinced. Well, that's not ignorant. Well, actually, I wouldn't say that ignorant. That's being
I
stubborn.
don't want to use that word, no, because there's rationalization in accordance. We'll find a rationalization in accordance with your own will.
Yeah.
I don't want to use that because I'm rationalizing it against what you're telling me, just so I can do it according to my will. I'm choosing, I'm not choosing, I'm just not convinced, not because I want to do it, but because I feel like this kind of goes down to the point of uses.
Pause.
Of Paul's point of whether the advice is correct or not. But I feel like sometimes the advice that you're given is not. How do I put it? It's almost like you're told, like a child. When you're told as a child, this is wrong. It's okay. Mum knows the best. But when you're a teenager, well, how do I know that mum knows the best? What if I'm not, like, I'm ignorant enough to know, to be like, well, you know what, I want to challenge this, but I don't have enough information.
But doesn't it on the source of the information? So obviously a person walking the street, stranger, you wouldn't, of course you're not going to be convinced, but if it comes from someone who is trustworthy, like a parent or a spiritual father or something, yeah,
But like, if you came to me and you told me, you sure this is wrong, I'm going to challenge you.
which you always do anyway.
Exactly. So that's what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That it's not like I don't trust you. It's not that like, it's
So,
just,
so what is it then? If it's not about not trusting, what is it then? You're not convinced. So, but if it's coming from someone out of love, someone who's experienced, someone who cares about you, and you know that, then what more do you need?
There are some things that if you're told, unless you go through it, you don't believe. Like when your parents tell you that's expensive, now that's hard to earn, use it wisely, but you don't realise until you work and you understand how hard that is to earn. You don't understand that until then, even though you're told by people that you trust.
Okay.
So some things you just have to do. Is that what you're saying?
That point, I was going to talk about that towards the very end, about having of listened to what people tell you to do. You want to experience it yourself. But I'm going to look at it. It's actually a Bible verse towards the end of the chapter. So I'll leave that. Maybe we'll touch on that one. But very good, guys. I'm very happy with that discussion. You've got very good points. But I think, and that's why I started by saying, let's humble ourselves. Okay, because this is the key. If we start with a position of humbleness, if I humble myself, then these things will be easier. It will be easier to accept correction. It will be easier not to doubt things. It'll be easier to challenge things because I'm humbling myself. I'm going to keep repeating humility a lot throughout this chapter or the rest of it because this is the key. And by the end of preparing this chapter, I put it in bold. I said the key is humility, okay? Because if we don't start with humility, we could be here for years. As Bishop said, we'll be challenging everything. We'll be questioning everything. Well, I'm not convinced enough. Convince me. And that's why there's a lot of arguments between children and their parents, is because the children have to be convinced. But where's the element of trust, obedience, humility? You know better. Maybe I know less. Where did that go? Where's that? That's due to lack of humility. And that's why this is the key. But we'll touch on it as we go. Okay. One of the saints, Saint Gregory, commentary on that verse, or around this area. He said a long commentary, but I'm trying to summarize it for you. So what he's basically saying is, he's saying, do not do anything without counsel. He said, do not do anything without counsel. And the one who neglects to consider in advance what he expects to do straightens his steps, closes his eyes, and arrives at the end of his way, but does not proceed his steps with foresight. That means they just go and they don't plan ahead, and they're not actually taking any advice about what's lying ahead. They just go for it, probably similar to what you're saying, Simon, like, I'm just going to go for the experience, I'm just going to go ahead with it, and then think about the end later. I'm just going with my instinct, and I'm not actually planning. And he says, the one who neglects to consider in advance what he expects to do straightens his steps. So what he's saying basically, and he said he will quickly stumble because he does not pay attention. So what St. Gregory is saying here is saying that you need to plan, you need to have counsel so you know where you're going. You don't just go blindly and say, well, I'm going to try myself, or I'm going to go without planning, or I'm going to go, without counsel. That's what he's trying to say. So look at verse 22. So we talked about verse 21, a sinful man will reject correction. But verse 22, a man of counsel would not reject understanding. So this is the opposite now. Okay? Verse 22, a man of counsel is on the screen. Yes. A man of counsel will not reject understanding. A strange and arrogant man will not be disturbed by fear. So he, on the contrary, the wise man is the one who seeks counsel before making decisions, and not arrogant, then he will not regret his decisions. Okay? So I want you to help you understand what this means. Let's look at Proverbs 11, if we can get it up on the screen, please. Proverbs 11, verse 14. So now we're looking at the opposite side, okay? Someone who's wise and someone who seeks counsel before making decisions, okay? Proverbs 11:14, what does it say? Can someone read it for us, please?
Where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors, there is safety.
What do you think of that? In the multitude of counselors, there is safety. Or there is safety in the multitude of counselors. What do you think that means? There is safety in the multitude of counselors. What do you think that means?
It's hard to fall safe because all the counselors are the wise ones, and the ones that give you advice and be able to guide you so that you don't fall. It's safe.
Exactly. All right? So why there's safety? Because you're getting counsel, you're getting direction, you're getting someone who's advising you, someone who's helping you, someone who's helping you along the way, someone who's directing your steps. Okay? That's why there's safety, and that's why before it says what? Where there is no counsel, the people fall. Okay? Where there is no counsel, the people fall. So how to prevent that fall? By having counsel. Okay? Can you see how this is going back to the same point? It's emphasizing the importance of having counsel, of having someone to guide you before making decisions so you don't regret it later on. Okay? So we'll come to that verse later. So basically, verse 24 goes on and say, okay, son, you should, verse 24, so this is basically the advice. Son, you should do nothing without counsel, and then you will not regret what you have done. This is basically the summary. You shouldn't do anything without counsel, so you don't regret, okay? Why we regret many of the decisions that we make is because we didn't get enough guidance or enough counsel. We went with our minds, or we relied on people who don't have, are not wise in giving counseling, and that's why our decisions were not the best decisions, and that's why we regret. And this is what he's saying. He's saying, Do nothing without counsel. Then you will not regret what you have done. So why do we, going back again, why we reject or not seek counsel? Because we think this is a sign of weakness. No one mentioned that. Have you thought of that? People see, well, I'm strong. If I'm strong, I don't need. If I go and ask for advice, that's actually a sign of weakness. What do you think about that? Some people say that. People think if they ask for advice, that means they're weak. That means they're lacking something. Then that means, they're not as good as they want people to believe they are, because they're relying on someone else. They're asking for counsel. What do you think? Sorry, we're not using the microphone. I forgot. We're using the microphone for the last.
I hire people sometimes on construction sites, for example. And the people that ask me how to do something end up avoiding any danger and avoiding injury, and they're able to lead others. Whereas the ones that don't, you can tell, often they do want to cover weakness for the sake of strength, to seek to advance. But I don't think when someone looks at from the outside, it's not seen as weakness, it's seen as strength. But internally, it can be seen as weakness if one doesn't see the benefit of asking for advice, which comes down to the need for wise people to be able to give advice.
And then we can go back to what the points we said at the beginning is the reasons why people that don't see that is because they see it's a sign of weakness, but it's actually coming out of what? Pride, insecurity, laziness, all the other reasons that we said at the beginning. Can you see how they all link together? Okay, and that's why they don't seek that, because no, it's a sign of weakness. But if we look at a sign of weakness, can you tell me? Do you know anything about like top government officials, like the premiers, the presidents of countries? Do they have any counselors, advisors? Top government officials always have advisors. Have you heard of that? The advisor to the president, the advisor to the prime minister. So why do they need? They're top people. They can make decisions by themselves. They have the right. What do they need advisors for? Have you thought about that? Does that shake their position? Does that make them weaker as leaders because they have advisors? Have you thought about that? Top people have advisors. Why do they need advisors? They're top people. The president, the top. Why do you need to advise to get the counsel of anyone? You can make decisions by yourself. You're the most powerful person in the country. What does it tell us? There is safety in the multitude of counselors. Because if there's no counselors, people will fall. This verse, see, they apply this verse without realizing that's a verse in the Bible, but they actually apply that verse practically, we need to get advisors. And that's why before they make any decisions, they make sure they have meetings and they discuss it and they ask their advisors and they get advice. Why? To make sure they make the right decision. Does that mean they're weak? No, that means they're wise. Okay? So we need to differentiate between what's a sign of weakness and what's a sign of wisdom. And this will make the person much more wiser, much more respected, and they will get rid of the insecurity they have inside. And that's why some people at work, for example, when they, some people when they start new work, they get too scared to ask questions. I think if they ask questions, people think they're dumb, they don't understand what's wrong with you. So they keep saying, yes, you understand, yeah, they keep saying that. And then when they come to do the work themselves, they have no idea. And then which one is the worst outcome, do you think? Okay, so we all know, I'm sure we'll all been through this and we want to pretend that we know when we don't know, and we don't want to ask questions because we're afraid they're going to be judged, or people say that you're not smart enough. But there's nothing wrong with it. We need to ask so we become better people, and not to let our insecurities, our pride, our laziness, and all other reasons get to us. Okay, so moving forward, where do we get this counsel from? Okay, so now we established it's important to get counsel. Okay, there's safety in the multitude of counsel. Where do we get this counsel from? Which shop they sell counsel? Sorry? Confession Fathers. Yes, that's on my list. Thank you. Sorry. Books of wisdom. So the Bible. Okay, excellent. The Bible. I had that first on my list. We get counsel from the Bible, from our confession father. Who else? Or what else? Are you cold, guys? Are you cold?
No, it's not cold.
It's not cold?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was okay.
You turned it off?
Just now.
That means you're cold. So what do you say now?
We're not cold.
Okay. So where do we get this counsel from? Because now we established that counsel is good. There's safety in the multitude of counselors. We get it from confession fathers. We get it from the Bible. Where do you get it from? Okay. Now we say, okay, I agree. From now on, I'm going to go and get counsel. Where do they buy counsel? Where do you buy it from? Experienced people. Okay. What do you think? Because the source of that counsel will determine whether it's actually the right, because you can get the wrong counsel. Yeah? So it's not just a matter of getting counsel. What's more important now is you decided, okay, I'm going to get advice from someone. That source could make the difference between the right decision at the end and the wrong decision. Okay? So obviously you have to think carefully about the source of that counsel or advice. So where would you go for that? Confession father, Bible, experienced people. Sorry? Professionals. Okay, so it depends what type of counseling you're getting is professionals in that field. So if you want to, for example, get advice about a particular career pathway, you're not going to go to a different career, profession, another career and ask you for that advice. You're not going to get benefit from that. It's common sense, but sometimes we do mistakes like that. We go to wrong people for advice, and then we think, well, I got advice, but you went to the wrong person. Okay? It sounds very common sense, but we actually fall into these traps, guys, without realizing. What else? Friends? Well, that could be a huge question mark next to them. Isn't it? Before, I want to stick with friends, because that actually is the most problematic source. You know? Depends which friends, depends what the experience of that friend, depends on your relationship with that friend. Can you see there's many variables? We can't just say, I'm going to go to my friends for advice. Really? Actually, that friends, we have to stop there, because we have to ask many questions whether that friend is actually qualified to be a counselor for you. And to be honest, that's where most of us go wrong, is we go to people on the same level as us, and we get what they say, and we take it as, you know, as that's it. And we don't listen to anyone else. Because my friend said so. And that's where we can go wrong. Why do you think I'm cautious about that?
If Christ is the way and the truth and the life, then if there's advice that leads towards Christ, then it's good counsel. Whereas some advice can seem like it is good for a situation, but might be a burden into vice or a burden into wrong. For example, advice like go and get revenge, for example. And I think that's the important thing to discern first before seeking. It could be a friend, or like you're saying, it has to be a friend that points towards Christ, because then it's just Christian wisdom.
Excellent. Okay? Because you may be angry from someone and go to a friend and complain and say, what do you think I should do about that person? As you said, Paul, go and revenge. Go whatever. You know, do this and do that. And sometimes our friends try to win us by telling us what we want to hear. Have you had that before? Your friends know what you want to hear. So to win you, they'll tell you what you want to hear. That could be right, that could be wrong advice. But at the end of the day, you'll be happy with your friend because your friend told you what you want to hear. But does it mean it was actually good advice? No, it doesn't mean that. Okay? So can you see where a lot of things can go wrong? I'm just highlighting some things to keep in mind, guys. The thing is, when you're searching for advice, don't search for people who will tell you what you want to hear, because that means there's no point in getting advice. You're better off not getting advice in the first place, because you're kidding yourself. The whole point of getting advice is to know what is the right thing to do, whether that's according to your will, as the other verse that we said, whether that's what you want or not. You have to be fair and you have to be honest with yourself. Do you want to get advice because you want people to validate how you feel? Or you want to get advice to know exactly what is the right thing to do in the circumstance? And that needs maturity. Because most of us will lean towards, obviously, going to the person to hear what they want to say. And I can see this happens even within the spiritual realm, even within the church. For example, some people will go priest shopping. You know what that means? I want a particular advice about something. I want to do something, but I want Abuna to tell me yes, so I feel okay. Abuna gave me the green light. So I got Abuna Shenouti. Abuna said, no, I don't agree. I said, no, okay, I'm going to go to Abuna Mikhail. He says, no, okay, I'm going to go to Abuna X. Abuna X said, no. Okay, I hear from a friend that Abuna Y, 100 kilometers away, will agree with what I'm saying. So I'm going to go all the way to Abuna Y because he's going to agree with what I say. Then I'll come back and say, Abuna agreed with what I say. What about the 3 other priests that said no? Doesn't count. Can you see how selective we are with our advice? We're very selective. So to sort of to validate our feelings or to clear our conscience, whatever the reason, we're kidding ourselves. And we need to back that up with someone. So I'll be happy with the friend that will back me up and will support, you know, or will tell me what I need. But that's not a wise person. Why are you all looking at me? Am I?
Somewhere you seek the advice you need to hear, not the advice you want to hear.
Yeah, it's advice in the second. What is right? Second sense, regardless what's your will, what you want, what's your intention, what's your choice. If you're really a wise person, I'm talking about someone who's wise here, or someone who wants to be wise. Okay. Otherwise, you're going around in circles. You're kidding yourself, and that's why we don't progress, guys. That's why we don't develop in our spiritual life. Is because our source of advice is not necessarily the best source. We're not surrounded by necessarily the right people to advise us, and when the right people come to advise us, we go back to the verse, which is we reject the advice. Can you see that? Again, it's the need for maturity and the need to be honest with oneself. Okay. What about prayer as a source of counsel? What do you think? Have you tried that before? Have you tried about praying about something and you genuinely wanted to hear God's sort of opinion about this, or God to guide you somehow? And he said, I'm going to pray about this. Have you had that experience before? You want to share it with us? Okay, that's fine. You don't have to share it with us. But I encourage you to do this, okay? Again, if you're genuine in your prayer and you genuinely want to hear God's voice, you will hear God's voice. God will tell you, something inside you will tell you, no, what you've done is wrong. Go fix it. Or no, that way you're going in is wrong. You know, that advice you got from your friend, you know it's wrong. Don't act on it. Remember the advice you got from the 100-year-old man that you thought he was old-fashioned? That was the right advice. Go back to that advice. You remember your parents when they tell you this? I know you don't want to accept your parents as they know everything. I know it hurts your pride, but they're actually right. Sometimes we have to face it, okay? We have to face it. So, okay. Can we move on, or any comments before we move on to the next point? Because it's a bit different. Any comments? Okay, let's move on. Verse 25. You should not go into the way of ruin, and you then will not stumble on stones. You should not commit yourself to a laborious way, otherwise you may set up a scandal against your own soul. What do you think that means? This is very practical. We wanna sort of talk about it from a practical point of view. What do you think, guys?
Maybe it's saying, like, if you can see a bad path, like, don't walk down it and then be surprised when...
Yes.
Like, don't walk down it and then be surprised by
be surprised by like the outcome. Like you're going to stumble on stones if you're on the wrong path. It's like the two go together. So don't be surprised that that is how life is.
Exactly. Well done. Okay. Many people get into a way of ruin or a way of evil, and they find the end is destruction, and they're very surprised. Why did it end this way? Why is it bad? Well, what do you expect? Okay. As Pascal said, you're going into the wrong way, and then you're going to be stumbling on stones. You're going to be stumbling, you're going to fall. And that's why it says you are setting yourself up against your own soul. That's how it ends. Like you're actually setting up yourself for failure or setting up yourself to fall, okay, because you started in the wrong way, okay? So basically the advice is don't go into the way of ruin or evil, if you want to swap into the way of evil, because its ending is destruction, okay? We know that very clearly. We may not like it, and we may try to negotiate that, and we try to pretend, no, it's not that bad, but the end is destruction. And people throw themselves in a way that they haven't tried before, and they will say, I'll try it, okay? So what I mean by that is I've come across many people like that who have very high level of curiosity. They always want to know what happens if I do this. Their level of curiosity is very high, and they want to try new things, okay? And despite the clear dangers and the clear advice they get against that way, they still want to try it. I just want to try it. I want to get the experience. I just want to try it for myself. What do you think about that mentality? Someone actually said that to me. I remember I was advising someone to not do a particular thing because it's bad for them. I told them, this is bad for you, don't do it. And that was the response. The response was, I told her, people tried it, it's bad, and people who tried it, they said it's bad, and the response I got was really alarming. And this response the response was, well, I want to have that experience myself. I don't want to rely on other people's experiences. I want to experience that myself. I don't care about other people's experiences. That was the response. What do you think about that?
I really agree with that. It can be good because if that person is a curious person, they're going to do it anyways, and they're going to have the experience. And then let's say that they do experience and they realize that it is bad for them, then that curious thought of, oh, should I do this, will go away. Like they've tried it, they've done it, and they realize it wasn't best for them. And then it could go the other way if they do try it and they fall in love with it, and then it takes them away from God. So it can go both ways, because I feel like if you are curious and even if your confession father is saying, I don't recommend you doing this, you still think about it and you still want to do it anyways, you're going to do it. Like, it's going to happen. So, but what happens after that is, it can go both ways.
But even if you know the other people before you took the same path and the end was bad?
Yeah, because everyone has a different personality.
Like if you're driving and saying road closed, would you continue driving?
I think that's not the right analogy.
No?
No.
So okay, God, what's
Well, I was going to add on to what you were saying. It's like when you have a kid and they've never touched like a flame before, and you tell them don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it, and their curiosity gets them and they touch it. It's only at that point that they like learn their lesson and don't touch it again. So that would be like the counter. Obviously, I know you shouldn't do it in the first place, but like that's the concept we use for ourselves when we're younger, and it seems to then stray away from that as we get older, and we're meant to then rely on the experiences of others, which can be quite a hard concept.
Okay, but I agree with you, but that's if you don't have, for example, enough evidence in front of you that this is bad. Like, for example, if I say, okay, many people haven't tried drugs. Many people haven't tried, heroin or cocaine or whatever. But if I tell anyone who's a reasonable person, you want to try, they will say no. Why? Because they know this is bad. Do you actually have to try it yourself? There's a lot of evidence, there's a lot of people that may have tried it, and what happened to them. Would you still try it for the sake of having your own experience? Some people still try. I agree with you. Some people will actually still, after saying all this, yes, I want to still try it. But would you categorize that person as a wise person then? Sorry?
I think experiences like that are different, because every sound person knows that
those kind of drugs aren't good for you,
Mm.
and only bad things will come from it, you know. But I think like an experience like if a person comes to you during confession, they say, well, no, I'm thinking of doing this, and then you give them advice. I don't think you should go in this path because I know many people who have tried it and they failed, or, you know, etc. Something like that. Then that's where this applies, not like drugs, for example, or things that are like.
Yeah, of course, and I agree.
You know,
I'm not saying be boring guys and don't try anything new. No, that's what I'm not saying, and that's what the Bible's saying. The Bible's saying, make it clear. He's saying you should not go into the way of ruin, okay, and set up a scandal against your own soul. So it's something that it's ruined, something that you can see is evil. I'm sure there's something which is not clear, and say for example, someone who wants to start a new business and comes to say, I want to start this particular business, I can tell them, well, I know 2 people who started the same business and they failed. Does that mean he cannot try that business? He can still try it. Yeah? I think that's what you're talking about. No, that's fine. We're not talking about that. Touching the flame?
We're talking about like more like hard lines, like things that are a sin, don't even try.
Exactly. And that's why I said, you should not go into the way of ruin. You can see that's a way of ruin. You can see that the road is closed. That's why I use the example. You can see the sign saying, road closed. Caution, road closed. Would you go? Yeah, many people go. Many risk takers will actually want to know, why is it closed? What's behind that? Yeah, many people go there. You know, many people actually go for that thrill. Yeah, actually, that's like adventure. Okay, why is it closed? What's happening? What's behind that sign? They want to explore. Yeah, that's curiosity. Okay, and we're trying to say here, the wise person, you have to assess that very carefully. If you see a way of sin, a way of evil, do not go there. And what I'm talking about is clear stuff. Like again, like that's why I use, for example, drugs or smoking, or someone do a particular thing that you know it's bad, and everyone knows it's bad, but some people still do it. Okay, some people because they want to have that experience. Okay, they want to have that thrill. It's like saying bungee jumping. Has anyone tried it? Anyone threw themselves from it? You've tried it? Okay. Would anyone here try it? Would anyone here try it? You want to try it? Can you tell us your experience?
It's crazy.
Would you do it again?
Oh, I did it again.
You did it again.
The
Okay.
same day.
How high?
I don't remember now. 150.
Okay. So not to be rude, but some people already judging you in their mind and saying she's crazy.
Yeah.
I will never do it. Some people sitting here say, no way I'll do it. And some people saying, Paul saying, yes, I want to do it. Can you see? Okay. So this one, there's a thrill to it. It's safe because you're protected and all that. But if I tell you, try jumping from a high building for the thrill of it. But you know what? I'm sorry to forgot to tell you, I can't guarantee the landing, safe landing. Would you do it if they tell you, we don't know about the harness that you have on, we can't guarantee that? Would you do it? See, that's what I mean. Because you're a wise person, you say, no, I have the curiosity, I have the thrill for the jump, but I have to think of the landing. I have to think of the end. It's not just going into the way, I have to think what's at the end of that way. Is it really safe for me? Yeah, there's a thrill, there's all this, beautiful experience. Excellent, but what about the landing? Can I actually try jumping from a high building for the thrill of it and don't worry about the landing or the ending? That's unwise, isn't it? But you did it because there was a lot of safety before and a lot of, protection, yeah? But I'm sure if I told you to do it, you wouldn't have done it otherwise. That's what I mean, okay? That's by being wise. Don't go into a way knowing it's bad and the ending is bad and people tell you it's bad and you still go for it. That's being unwise. That's being unwise. And that's where many people fall. And that's when many people say, but I won't have that experience. No. Experience does not always mean it's a good thing, guys, okay? If someone already tasted something and it's bad and they got poison, food poisoning from it, why are you trying it? You'll be very silly if you do that. Just for the experience of the taste, but the ending is bad. Can you see that? That's where wisdom comes in. And again, we have to balance the curiosity and my own experience with what is the ending. And that's where counsel comes in. That's why I'm going back to counsel when people tell you, don't do this because this is the ending. If I'm humble, I'm gonna listen. If I trust these people and from a good source, I'm gonna listen to them. And I'm not gonna set a trap for myself, which is basically, in other words, the Bible says, don't tempt yourself. Have you heard that before? Do not tempt yourself. Sometimes we tempt ourselves in doing the wrong thing or in going in the wrong direction. We tempt ourselves. We don't have to go there, but we choose to go there. And when we go there, we think it's not that bad. But once we're on that road, we discover all these bad things come up, and we enter into the temptation, and we find ourselves stumbling on stones, as it says here, and then realize, why did I get myself into this big mess? I should have said no from the beginning. I'm sure you've come across scenarios like that, where you said, why did I get myself in that mess? I should have stopped. I should have listened from the beginning. This is what we're talking about here. Okay? So don't go for that, way and risk it and stumble and just for the sake of curiosity or experience. No. You're going to be regretting it later. Why do it? That's not wise. That's not wise to do it. So that's what we're talking about. Okay, so I'll end with Proverbs 14:12 on that point. Proverbs 14:12. Can someone read it for me, please? And we'll end with that one. Proverbs 14:12. Anyone can read it? No readers?
There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death.
I thought that was the best, beautiful verse that sums up what we're talking about. Yeah? So that way seems right to me. But what matters is the end. The end is what? Destruction, death, no good. So the wise person always keeps the end in mind. We sometimes don't think about the end. We're happy to go through the experience and the thrill of it, and don't worry about the end. And that's where wisdom comes in. That's where maturity comes in. And that's why you find people who are young, who are irrational, who are teenagers, they don't think about the end. They always think about now. Okay, I want to have fun now. But you know what that leads to now? They don't think that far. And that's where maturity and wisdom comes in. There's a way that seems fine to me. But what should be the question is, what's the end? Where does that road lead me? Where does it end? Is it a dead end? Is it danger? And that's why I love this verse. There's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Okay, I'm going to end with that. Keep that verse in mind. And the key to it is humility. If I humble myself, I'm going to admit it, that way is wrong. I'm not going to continue in it. Or I'm going to listen to advice and not even start that way in the first place, because the book of wisdom tells me so, and because of the experiences of the people that I trust as my advisors. Glory be to God for Amen. It's 9 o'clock, and I said I'm going to want to finish exactly in 9 o'clock. Any questions, guys? We haven't finished. I was hoping to finish the chapter tonight, but the discussion was good. But we only have only 3 verses left. That's fine. Any questions? I think it's enough. You had enough. Okay. Thank you. Everyone, are you sure? You agree, guys? You agree? Okay. So I'll finish 9 o'clock on the.
I just want to touch on what was said earlier. I feel like it's not that simple that, like, just because something is wrong and we know it's wrong and it's a sin, therefore don't do it. I think that's very oversimplified. Like, because what if it's our desires that is pushing us towards it? So, like, you gave the example of drugs. No one has a desire naturally to seek out drugs, but something like, a chocolate or like a pancake or something really nice, like, that's natural for us, like, within us to seek it. So I feel like our desires play a part in it as well. So it's not as simple as saying it's a sin.
Of course, very, very good point, of course. If that was the case, then none of us will do anything wrong, yeah? You're right. And that's the whole point that we're trying to fix that, by trying to be wiser, to understand that we have to overcome that. What do you think, guys? Beautiful point. It's not that simple, because we have our desires are basically, when this was said, it's assuming that everything is constant. You know, we say, yeah, no problem. I'm not going to go this way. I'm going to go that way. But in reality, always having desires pulling us in other ways that we don't want to go there. It's a beautiful point. What do you think?
Aren't our desires, though, always sort of attached to a sin, whether they appear directly connected or in some other way connected? It might just be the first step to a sin. So whilst that first step's not a sin, it's the pathway to the sin.
I'm a bit uncomfortable saying that all our desires are a sin.
Not all of our desires, but in the case of like I don't know, if you're saying that, say, murder is the sin, well, like, your desire to like hurt someone and like hurting them as opposed to killing them, like that.
The beginning on the way.
On the way. Like, it still has to be like something negative. But yeah, that's my thought.
What about the desire to be successful in career? Is it a sin? That's a desire.
I don't think that's a desire that
That's a desire, of course.
is. Yeah, it's a desire, but it's not like a wrong desire from the outset.
Exactly. So that desire to be successful in my career may be perfect, depends on how I act on it. Because it may lead me to do the good things or may lead me to do bad things. Yeah? So the desire in itself is not wrong. How I action that desire or what do I do to satisfy that desire could lead me in different ways. And that's why at the end of the day, we need to exercise self-control and to control our desires. Because if we don't control our desires, there's no way we're going to be able to do anything that we just said for the past hour. We'll be just driven by our desires. It's like, when you see a dog, they're driven by their nose. The dog goes, they're just sniffing everything, eh? And just go, and then they find themselves in a place. They're just flying on their nose. They're not exercising their mind. They're just following their nose, literally. Sometimes we do that. Sometimes we follow our instincts without thinking, where would that lead us? And then the dog will lift up their head and they find themselves in front of a lion, for example. That's what happens with us. When we follow our instincts without thinking whether that road is leading to destruction, we might find ourselves in front of a dead end or something bad because we're just following our instincts. Okay? And that's the difference between humans and animals. Okay? We're intellectual beings. We think, we assess, we calculate. We have all these things happening behind the scenes. We shouldn't be just following our instincts and desires. Because if we just follow our instincts and desires, they'll be like animals. That's exactly the definition of animals. Okay? So with everything we do, there has to be self-control, there has to be discernment, there has to be assessing, there has to be counseling. That's what we're talking about. So I agree with you. Life will be much easier. But what we need to do is, we know my desires. Okay, my desire tells me to go this way. Do I just go with my desire? No. I have to stop and think. That desire, which is the way, that seems right to me. But the end, I need to think about the end. I need to imagine. That's why St. Gregory was saying, people just go, walk, and they don't plan ahead. They don't think about where the step is going to take them. And that's why we regret many decisions, is because we just run without thinking about where we're actually going. Okay, so we have to control our desires. That's why we have to have self-control, which is one of the fruit of the Holy Spirit, self-control. And we need to not give in to our desires. For example, fasting is one of the good ways the church helps us to control our desires, is through fasting, to be able to control our desires. Okay, I myself, I'm confessing I want to eat chocolate every single day. If you give me the opportunity, every single minute, okay? If it wasn't for fasting, I'll be eating every single day. So fasting helped me to control that desire. Okay, that's what we should be doing. So we cannot be led by our desires, but we have to control our desires and see what is right and what's wrong. And God gave us the mind to do that, and the wisdom through His Word.
Can I say something? Sorry. I feel like desires are feelings, and so they're separate from logic and rational thoughts. Like when you have a desire for something, it's usually like how you feel towards something that gives you that pulse to want to do it, right? I heard this thing, Abuna Anthony Missy had a really good one in America, and he said every time like you have a desire to do something wrong, replace it with something else. So like if you say you feel something, like you have like a list of things written down and replace it with something else. So like for example, I have a desire to eat chocolate, I'm going to eat something sweet, like a piece of fruit instead. Or like I have a desire to like, if someone, it's very different for people who are drug addicts, obviously, but they have coping mechanisms for people like that when they go into rehab and stuff. They give them something to compensate that. So it works in therapy as well. Or like same with counselors, and when they do therapy with people, they have different strategies to compensate for a feeling. It's like a counter feeling. I replace it with an action. So when there's a feeling, I replace it with an action, but something positive. So if someone has a desire to take drugs, for example, but it's purely because it's just out of curiosity. If you have the desire to take a drug, it's more like, okay, this is how I feel. This is not what I genuinely want to do. It's a feeling that will pass with time. So let me make myself busy and do something else in that time and distract myself to let that feeling pass. That's what I've heard. And then eventually, if you keep yourself busy, it might pass. So yeah.
We'll end it there because it's 9:10 nearly. Good comments, very good. So we can go on for ages, guys. It's a beautiful discussion. I'm really enjoying the discussion, but I'm just worried about the time, for your sake. Okay. So enough for tonight. Multiple glory be to God forever. Amen. See you next week, God willing. We'll be going every week. God allows us to do this, and I'll try to go a bit faster. Because some people are saying he's still doing wisdom strike after 2 years, so it makes me look like I'm I don't know. Yeah, but look, this book towards the end we're going to go a bit quicker because some of the stuff will be said in a different way. So I'll try to sort of go quicker because some of the things we covered before, I'm not going to repeat it again. To try and go quicker and try to finish this book. Obviously within a short period of time. Okay, or do you want us to go very slow? It's up to you guys. So we've been already 2 years, so I think it's enough. Probably another year before we finish this. I think you're becoming very wise after this. Very wise. Thank you guys, and I want to say, who hasn't been to Jerusalem? That's nearly all of you guys. Next holiday, plan it. It's a wonderful experience, and you know, I cannot describe the feelings when you go visit these holy places. Please, if you haven't been, you're probably wondering, it's not that big deal. What's a big deal? It's not really an attractive thing to do or destination, but trust me, ask anyone who went, and they'll tell you differently. So I encourage you, because we had a youth trip, and they really loved it. And that's why I'm recommending it, because it will actually will give you depth when you read the Bible. Will give you depth in your spiritual life if you take it as a really an opportunity to get deeper into your relationship with Christ. It will. Like today, for example, when I was reading one of the, just a quick to share experience with you. When we're praying tonight the Agbeya before the Bible study, which is not many of you attend. Hopefully you attend. One of the Psalms says, God, you're surrounded with the mountains as Jerusalem is surrounded with mountains. And mountains all about Jerusalem. I remembered actually, it's all mountains. And I remembered what the mountains look like. And I can see why the psalmist is writing that, because he lived there and he can see what the city is like. He can see what nature is like in that city. So he's using that in his prayers. We can't relate to that if you don't know what it looks like. You can't relate to that if you if you haven't been there, you can't relate when he's talking about certain cities or places where things happen. You can't really relate it. You can't say, okay, when Jesus went and raised Lazarus from the tomb, well, if you know what the tomb looks like, it will become more vivid. The experience becomes real. It's actually not stories that you read. You can actually relate to it more. Just an example. So I encourage you, if you haven't been, think seriously about going soon, guys. Glory be to God forever. Let's stand up to pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. We thank you, dear Lord, for another segment of wisdom, Lord, for us. Because no matter what we know, we're still limited, Lord, in our knowledge, in our wisdom. Help us to humble ourselves so we can learn from anything, Lord, that we see in everyone that tries to guide us, Lord, according to your will. Help us to seek the guidance that will take us closer to you. Help us to seek the counsel that's according to your word and will enrich our relationship with you. We ask you to give us the humility to be able to do that, to give us some simplicity, and to give us, Lord, all the virtues that we need to become wiser as you want us to be, your children. We ask you to be with all my brothers and sisters standing before you, Lord. Support them in everything they do. Give them that wisdom, Lord. Help them to become the person you want them to be according to image and likeness. Prayers and intercessions of St. Mary, St. Mina, and the saints of today. And we ask for special prayers and intercession of Jonah the prophet, and for us to learn from him, Lord, how to go and preach, even if it's against my will, even if it doesn't make sense to me. Help us, Lord, to obey you, to obey your word, and to go and to follow your instructions, and to humble ourselves. So the prayers and intercessions of all these saints and angels, hear us, pray thankfully. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and give us our trespasses, as we give those our trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. So Jesus Christ our Lord, for thine the kingdom, power, glory forever, amen. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. And now love of God the Father, grace with the only begotten Son, our Lord God and Savior Jesus Christ, the gift and the communion of the Holy Spirit with you all. Go in peace. May the peace of all be with you all. I've got plenty of Orban here for you, and I'm sure you missed Orban.